Ever wish you had like extra reassurance when it came to your Social Security benefits? Like knowing those monthly checks will keep coming no matter what.
That's a feeling a lot of people are looking for these days, especially with all the talk about potential changes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today. The built-in safeguards that are designed to protect those benefits no matter what the headlines say.
It's about uncovering those layers of protection that many people don't even know exist.
Exactly. We're talking about Social Security in the broadest sense here. So retirement benefits, of course, but also disability, SSDI, survivor's benefits, spousal benefits, SSI, even VA and Railroad Retirement Board benefits.
And what's interesting is that the protections we're going to talk about generally apply across the board, regardless of which specific benefit we're talking about.
That's a great point. So for this deep dive, our mission, should we choose to accept it,
I like where this is going.
is to reveal the top 3 safeguards that are working hard behind the scenes to keep your Social Security payments flowing like a steady stream.
And hopefully put your mind at ease a bit in the process.
Okay, let's jump right in with something that's making a lot of noise right now. This potential budget reconciliation bill going through Congress. The big question on everyone's mind is, can this actually impact my Social Security benefits?
And it's a valid question. But luckily, there's a pretty powerful safeguard in place to prevent that very thing from happening. It's called the Byrd Rule.
The Byrd Rule. And just so everyone's on the same page, we're not talking about our feathered friends here. It's spelled BYRD.
Right, it's a set of Senate rules, and they have a surprisingly strong impact on keeping your Social Security safe from, let's say, unexpected changes through this particular type of bill.
So how does this Byrd Rule actually work and what makes it so effective?
Well, the Byrd Rule basically sets some very specific limits on what can and cannot be included in a budget reconciliation bill. And the part that's really important for our discussion today is that it specifically prohibits any changes that would directly impact the benefits people receive from Social Security.
So that means any attempt to tinker with your Social Security benefits, to, adjust them in any way within this specific budget reconciliation process would hit a pretty big wall, like a roadblock.
Exactly. The Byrd Rule basically shuts that whole thing down. Think of it as a shield protecting your monthly checks from any sudden shifts through this particular legislative route.
Okay, that is reassuring. And it's definitely important to understand, especially with all the news swirling around. All right, let's shift gears now to our second big protection. Something called the protective filing date. You might not have heard of this one before, but knowing about it could make a huge difference if you ever need to apply for Social Security benefits.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those hidden gems that can really come in handy. So simply put, the protective filing date, or PFD, means that when you reach out to the Social Security Administration with the clear intention to file for benefits, be it SSDI, SSI, or retirement benefits, that date of first contact can actually count as your official filing date, even if you can't talk to someone right away or finish the whole application on the spot.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about how hard it can be sometimes to get through to these government agencies. The long hold times, scheduling appointments, that whole process can be a bit daunting.
Totally. And that's where the PFD swoops in to save the day.
Yeah.
Picture this. You're finally on the phone with Social Security after like an hour on hold, but you don't have all the information you need to complete the application right then. Or maybe you go to the local office, but you can't get an appointment that day. The PFD protects you in those situations.
So if you document that first attempt to connect with the clear intention to file, that date is like your starting point, even if there are some delays. What kind of documentation should our listeners be keeping track of?
It's really simple. Every single attempt you make to contact Social Security with the intent to apply. Jot down the date, the time, and how you reached out, whether it was by phone, in person, or even online if you get any confirmation number.
Yeah, those details could prove to be really important down the line. But the big question is, why is getting this protective filing date so important for someone's benefits?
Well, it all comes down to when your benefits can actually start and how much you'll receive. The date you officially file your application plays a big role in that calculation. But here's the kicker. If there are any holdups, like those we talked about, the protective filing date acts like a placeholder.
So it's like holding your spot in line.
Exactly. It protects you from losing out on benefits that you would have been eligible for if those administrative hurdles hadn't gotten in the way.
It's like having a little insurance policy for those frustrating situations. It makes you feel like you're at least in control of something, even if the process itself feels a bit out of your hands.
Definitely. And that peace of mind is invaluable, especially when dealing with something as important as Social Security.
Okay, so for our final safeguard today, we're tackling a topic that tends to raise a lot of anxiety: government shutdowns. And of course, the big worry is, what happens to my Social Security checks if the government shuts down?
Right, it's a totally understandable concern. But to really grasp why this fear is often unfounded, we have to understand the difference between two key categories of government spending: mandatory and non-mandatory.
Mandatory and non-mandatory, what's the difference there?
Well, mandatory spending refers to expenditures that are basically set in stone by law. It's an ongoing obligation that the government has to fulfill. You can think of it as pre-allocated money that's already spoken for. Non-mandatory spending, on the other hand, is the portion of the budget that Congress decides on each year.
That's where the debates and negotiations usually happen.
Exactly. That's the area that's most susceptible to the whole government shutdown scenario. But here's the key for our listeners. Social Security falls under mandatory spending.
So along with Medicare and Medicaid, defense spending,
Yeah,
and
but
these are the big ones, right?
exactly. And what this means is that the funding for these programs, including Social Security, comes from sources that aren't affected by the annual back and forth over the budget.
So even if there is a shutdown, those payments keep flowing.
That's the idea. It's like having a separate pipeline that keeps the money moving, regardless of what's going on with the rest of the budget.
It's almost like having a backup generator, just in case the power goes out.
I like that analogy because it really highlights the inherent stability of Social Security, even in the face of those potential disruptions.
So it sounds like people who rely on Social Security shouldn't really be losing sleep over a potential government shutdown affecting their checks.
Right, there's really no need for that level of worry. Of course, staying informed about the situation is never a bad idea.
But knowing that the system is designed to keep those payments flowing is definitely a huge weight off your shoulders. Okay, so let's recap the three big protectors we've covered today. First, we have the bird rule, that big defender against any changes to your benefits that might try to sneak in through a budget reconciliation bill.
Right, think of it as your first line of defense.
And we have the protective filing date, your personal time machine, that ensures you don't lose out on any benefits, even if there are some delays in the application process.
It's like having a safety net for your benefits.
And finally, the fact that Social Security falls under mandatory spending, that's your guarantee that those checks should keep coming, rain or shine, government shutdown or not.
It's all about building that sense of security for people who rely on these benefits.
Absolutely. And even though these protections are there, staying informed and up to date on any discussions or potential changes to Social Security is always a smart move.
Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your financial well-being.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So here's something for you to think about as we wrap up. Knowing about these safeguards, how does that affect your overall confidence in your financial future?
Food for thought, right?
Exactly. Because even in a world that can feel a bit unpredictable sometimes, these protections offer a solid foundation. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.